reading Thoreau 372, Illness and Recovery. Not in December, Thoreau had fretted at missing winter. Now he was out in it daily, far from envying the boys skating. Now he was one of them, 30 miles in a few hours. This was truly the winter of skating. On February 4th, and he and William Teppan spread their coattails to the wind like birds and sailed down Pantry Meadow on the ice, like a graceful demon, in the midst of a broad meadow, all covered and lit with the curling snow steam, leaping over the foul places to save their necks. Everyone marveled at the cold. The ice came so close to the town center. One could step from the rear of the bank and set sails on skates for any part of the Concord River Valley. In February, the cold stopped the clock. Looks like the cold stops your iPhone. Bed sheets froze above their faces as people slept. The fingers were so numb, they, quote, must leave many buttons unbuttoned. The cat meowed to have the door opened. We're reading about winter. Today is cold out, right? It got cold out. This is coordinated in real time with the weather. Ben was inclined to go out, returning hours later from some barn smelling of meadow hay. Quote, we all took her up and smelled of her, and it was so fragrant. Did you ever roll in the hay? Maybe that's good to smell like the barn. Indoors, Thoreau thawed his ink and wrote. Outdoors, he traced what mice, partridges, and foxes had written on the snow. He watched Theron, the woodchucker, cut down the great chestnuts that had shaded his Walden house. 70 feet, 5 tree rings, and the axe broke. It was so cold. The axe broke. Sophia's plants froze in the house. Do you think that our plants are freezing outside? God. What did I say? They had to come in by Monday. Sophia's, we're reading on November 11th or so. Sophia's plants froze in the house. It was important, thought Thoreau, to describe the weather, for it affects our feelings. Does the weather affect your feelings? Mine is, I'm completely immune to any sensation of any kind, good or bad, hot or cold. I just have to wear my scarf. It affects our feelings. That which was so important at the time cannot be unimportant to remember. Near the end of a cold, blistery March. This is New England for you, goodness. So raw that even Thoreau's patience was fraying. You'd think if he studied birds, he would think of flying south at least. They can't even think of flying south. He met his future biographer, Franklin Benjamin Sanborn. Oh, he's the biographer. The ambitious Harvard senior had dropped in on Emerson the previous fall, and Emerson, impressed, invited Sanborn to open a school in Concord right away. They needed one badly. Thoreau and Sanborn almost crossed paths in January, when Thoreau dropped off a copy of A Week at Harvard for a student who had written a kind essay on him for the Harvard magazine. Sanborn took the book without recognizing its author and duly passed it along. Only hours later did he put two and two together when he saw Thoreau deep in conversation with Thaddeus Harris. Too late to introduce himself, so he wrote an unctuous letter spiced with an undergraduate's careless contempt. Quote, "Ask me what I think of your philosophy. I should be apt to answer that it is not worth a straw." Interesting. His future biographer said it's not worth a straw. It was worthless. His philosophy is worthless. I put down that Thoreau's reply diplomatically ignored. Sanborn moved fast. On March 13, Emerson offered him the schoolhouse, rent-free, 20 pupils, and a salary of $850. That's pretty good, isn't it? I guess it's alright. Not sure. 2 days later, and his sister Sarah arrived in Concord, arranging to rent Valerie Channing's upstairs room and take their meals across the street with the Thoreaus. Later, Sanborn sketched a typical dinner, quote, "A deaf Mr. Thoreau presiding silently, while Henry led the conversation, pausing patiently, and interrupted by the loquacious Cynthia, taking up her train of talk exactly where he'd left off the instant she was done. Sophia joining in energetically all the while. When Thoreau paid his new neighbors a formal call, Sanborn judged him to be, quote, "a sort of pocket edition of Emerson." It's like he's just a footnote to Emerson. Maybe he's a footnote just to Plato. A sort of pocket edition of Emerson, plainly dressed, in unfitting clothes, rudely and weather-beaten, like, quote, "some shrewd and honest animal, some retired, philosophic woodchuck." A philosophic woodchuck. My God, that is so funny. Or magnanimous fox. That's interesting too. That's funny. There was talk of Thoreau's coming on as a teacher, which he declined, although he often led the students, including various young Emersons, Alcotts, and Hawthornes, together with Henry James' sons, Wilkie and Bob, and a daughter of John Brown, out on Saturday excursions. Remember, we're talking about the town Concord, where they say half of American literature came from. Half of all good classical American literature came from Hawthorne, Alcott, Emerson, Henry James, and I don't know the whole list because I'm not a profoundly scholastic erudite, great extensive erudition, and uneducated. On May 12, two of Sanborn's Harvard friends brought his furniture up from Cambridge in a wagon, and the three men borrowed Thoreau's boat, moored as it was in their own backyard, for a leisurely float down the Concord River. Sanborn was home. Well into 1855, Thoreau's journal simmered happily along. His journal's simmering now. Does your journal simmer happily along? Are you journaling happily? It was spring, and everywhere the work of killing was going on. Though through his telescope he watched Garfield shoot a red-tailed hawk out of the sky, and hunters boat through the meadow shooting muskrats. He dodged poets to retrieve a beautiful duck floating deep in the water, and found it was a rare merganser. He's getting rare ducks now. Shot dead rare ducks. Jacob Farmer said he trapped 100 mink a year. Guess you don't have to go to Russia to get a mink coat. But what do they call it? A sable? A norka? Norka. The Russians call them a norka, a sable. And there's this town in Greece where they make fur. A fur town in Greece. Goodwin and the hunter took 25 pouts. This is horrible. We're talking about the murder of animals. Pouts and one perch at Walden, hunting with his telescope instead. Thoreau hunts with his telescope. Hunting with his telescope instead, Thoreau watched a herring gull, quote, stroking the air with his wings, unquote. He hunted with his hands, too, reaching into a stump and clasping a flying squirrel on a guess. It struggled and bit his fingers. Thoreau tied it up in a handkerchief and brought it home. He spent the evening watching it fail to fly, leaping pathetically from the furniture, only to plop ridiculously on the floor. Next day he returned the defeated little being to the small stump, where, eyeing him closely, it skimmed down and away from him up a nearby maple. Then, quote, away it went in an admirable style, more like a bird than a quadruped it had dreamed of, stirring around the trees like a hawk. Finding a screech owl in a knothole, he reached in and stroked it like a cat, the little owl. He inclined his head a little lower and closed his eyes entirely. One day, when a few loafers jeered at him, he was ready. Quote, halloo, Thoreau, and don't you ever shoot a bird then when you want to study it? Question. Quote, do you think that I would shoot you if I wanted to study you? Unquote. We read about Thoreau's hunting style and the winter weather, and this guy, his future biographer. We're reading about his biographers in a biography.